How were the first bricks even made? Like, way back in ancient times, before we had all this fancy stuff.
Great question. Imagine you're living thousands of years ago, maybe by a big river in a place like ancient Mesopotamia. People needed strong building blocks for houses and walls, but they didn't have factories or machines. So they looked around at what was right there in nature. The main thing they used was mud, thick, sticky clay from the riverbanks. It was super common and free, just like the dirt you squish in your backyard after rain.
Mud? For bricks? That sounds kind of gross and weak. Not like the hard red ones we see today.
I get why you'd think that. It does seem messy at first. But mud was actually perfect because it's moldable, like Play-Doh you can shape. To make it stronger, they mixed in sand. Sand adds grit, kind of like how gravel makes concrete tougher today. It stops the mud from shrinking and cracking when it dries. And here's the clever part. They tossed in bits of plants, like straw or grass, to hold it all together. Those fibers act like tiny ropes, binding the mix so it doesn't fall apart. Think of it like weaving a basket. The straw makes the mud weave into something solid.
Oh, so sand for strength and plant stuff to stick it? That makes sense. Where did they get all that from?
Everywhere, really. The mud came straight from rivers or wet ground nearby. Sand was just scooped from beaches or dry riverbeds. And the plant fibers? They cut straw from fields or used reeds from the water's edge. Ancient folks in places like Egypt or Iraq would gather this during the dry season. No shopping trips needed. It was all local and everyday. They'd mix it by hand or feet, stomping around in big pits until it was like thick cookie dough. This simple combo let them create the world's first bricks around 7,000 years ago. Pretty smart, right? Without it, they'd still be piling up loose stones that tumble down.
Yeah, that does sound smart. So they had this gooey mud mix ready, but how did they turn it into actual bricks?
Exactly. That's the fun part coming up. They had ways to shape it just right so it wouldn't stay a sloppy mess.
Okay, tell me, how did they shape that mud stuff without it just flopping everywhere?
They got creative with simple tools, like kids making mud pies, but way more organized. First, they'd grab wooden frames. Think of them as basic rectangles carved from tree branches or planks, maybe a foot long and half a foot wide. These molds were like cookie cutters for dirt. A worker would plop a big handful of the wet mud mix into the mold, pressing it down firmly with their hands or a flat stick to push out any air bubbles. It had to be packed tight, so no wobbly spots. Once it was filled, they'd lift the mold off gently, leaving a neat rectangular lump on the ground. No fancy machines, just elbow grease and sunshine.
Wooden molds? That sounds easy enough. But then what? Did they just leave them sitting there?
Pretty much. In places like ancient Egypt or the Middle East, where the sun beats down hot and dry for months, they'd lay these fresh mud bricks out in rows on flat sunny spots, maybe on rooftops or open fields. No rain to worry about during the dry season. They'd flip them after a day or so to dry evenly, like turning cookies on a baking sheet. It took about a week or more of that blazing heat to harden them up. The water in the mud evaporates slowly, and the clay particles stick together, turning the soft goop into solid, sun-baked bricks. These were brownish and a bit crumbly, but strong enough to stack for walls. Imagine baking cookies in the world's biggest oven, the sun itself.
Sun-baked bricks? Cool. But wouldn't they get all mushy if it rained? Like, poof, back to mud?
That's a smart worry. Rain could indeed soften them over time, especially in wetter places. These sun-dried ones worked great in super-dry deserts, where homes stayed cozy and dry inside. But yeah, they weren't perfect for everywhere. People noticed that after a storm, walls might crack or erode a little. It was like building a sandcastle at the beach. Fun until the tide comes in. So they started thinking bigger to make them last through any weather. Those early bricks were a huge step, though. Let folks build actual rooms instead of just huts from sticks.
I guess drying in the sun was a good start, but yeah, rain sounds like a problem. How did they fix that to make them way tougher?
They figured out a hotter way to toughen them up, turning that softness into something you could really count on for big builds.
A hotter way? Like with actual fire? That sounds risky. Wouldn't everything just burn up?
I hear you. Playing with fire does seem scary, especially back then without fire trucks around. But ancient builders were careful and smart about it. They didn't just toss the bricks into a bonfire and hope for the best. Instead, they invented something called a kiln, which is like a big outdoor oven made from mud or stone. Picture a dome-shaped pit, maybe dug into a hillside or built with bricks they already had. They'd stack the sun-dried bricks inside, close to each other but not touching too much, so heat could flow around them. Then, they'd light a fire at the bottom using wood or dried dung, stuff that burned steady and hot. It wasn't a wild blaze. They controlled it, feeding the flames slowly over days.
Kilns? Okay, that makes it less crazy. But why go through all that trouble if sun-drying kinda worked?
Great point. Sun-drying was easy and free. But as you said, rain wrecked it. Firing in a kiln changed everything by baking the bricks at super high heat, like 1,000 degrees Celsius or more. That's hotter than the hottest pizza oven. The fire drives out all the water deep inside the clay, and the heat fuses the tiny particles together, almost like melting them a bit and letting them harden as they cool. The result? Tough, red-fired bricks that don't crumble or soften in water. They're waterproof and super strong, lasting thousands of years. Think of it like toasting marshmallows. The outside gets crispy, but here the whole brick turns rock hard. Places like ancient India or China started doing this around 5,000 years ago, and it let people build in rainy spots without walls turning to mush.
Whoa, so the fire makes them fuse like super glued dirt? That's awesome. Did it take a long time?
Yep, exactly. Fused and unbreakable. The whole process could take a week. A couple days to heat up slowly so the bricks don't crack from the shock. Then holding that intense heat for hours, and finally cooling down overnight. Workers watched it like hawks, poking the fire and checking the smoke to know when it was right. The smoke would turn from thick gray to clear bluish when the bricks were fully fired. It was hard work, sweaty and smoky, but worth it. No more rebuilding after every storm. These fired bricks were a game changer, letting folks create lasting homes that stood up to floods or monsoons. Imagine your treehouse surviving a whole winter. That's the kind of toughness they got.
I bet that made building way more fun, not having to worry about the weather ruining everything. So, with these strong bricks, what could they do next that they couldn't before?
Oh, it opened up all sorts of possibilities for going bigger and bolder, like stacking way higher than ever.
Stacking higher? Like, how high are we talking? I mean, without anything to stick them together, wouldn't the whole thing just tip over like a stack of blocks?
Totally valid worry. It's like trying to balance a tower of Jenga pieces without the gluey bits holding them. But fired bricks had some built-in smarts that made tall stacking possible. First off, they were all made the same size and shape, thanks to those wooden molds we talked about. No wonky ones messing up the pile. Builders could lay them in neat rows like lining up Lego bricks perfectly. That uniformity created super stable walls, each layer locked into the one below, with the rough, textured sides gripping just enough to stay put. No mortar needed at first. The brick's own weight and that fired hardness kept everything from shifting.
Same size helps it not wobble? Huh. That does sound steady. But what about really tall stuff? Like more than a couple stories?
Exactly. And that's where the magic really kicked in. Before fired bricks, folks mostly built low, one-room huts because sun-dried mud crumbled under too much weight or toppled in earthquakes. But these tough, red-fired ones could handle the load, like strong bones supporting a growing kid. They resisted collapsing because the clay fused so densely in the kiln. It's almost like stone, but lighter and easier to work with. In ancient Mesopotamia, around 4,000 years ago, people started stacking them into 2- or 3-story homes. Imagine a cozy bottom floor for living, a middle for storage, and a roof terrace for stargazing. The walls could go up straight and true, with doorways and windows cut right in, all without falling apart.
3 stories from just bricks? That's wild! Did they have examples of super tall towers or something?
Oh yeah, they went even bigger. Take the ziggurats in places like Babylon, massive stepped towers that reached 7 levels high, like giant wedding cakes made of millions of bricks. Each layer was wider at the base to spread the weight, preventing that topple you mentioned. The bricks' durability meant they withstood winds, floods, and time. Some ruins still stand today after 4,000 years. It wasn't just towers. Fired bricks let cities grow with multi-story shops, temples, and palaces. Families could live stacked up, saving ground space for gardens or markets. Without them, everything would have stayed squat and spread out, like a messy playground instead of an organized town.
Ziggurats sound epic, like ancient skyscrapers. So the uniform shape and strength let them build up instead of out. I get it now. No more flimsy walls crashing down.
You've nailed it. Those first fired bricks turned dreamers into builders, creating homes that felt safe and grand. It's amazing how something as simple as heated mud changed the world, right? Makes you appreciate the sturdy houses we have today.
Yeah, totally. From mud pies to mighty towers, ancient people were geniuses. Thanks for explaining all that. I feel like I could build my own mini ziggurat now.